Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. These are the powerful words of Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem. Hello, everyone. My name is Lloyd, and I am so excited and proud to welcome you to our 2021 Black History Celebration. As one of the inaugural Diversity Fellows, Professor of Educational Leadership, and member of the Black and Latinx Faculty and Staff Association, we welcome you. Without each and every member, this would not be possible. Thank you, BLFSA. I am thrilled to be part of such an important endeavor at Queens College. Our theme, Sankofa, reminds us that in order to understand our present and ensure our future, we must know our past. Today, we welcome you to learn, be a part of our history beyond February. We look forward to an amazing program.
Welcome everyone to another critical presentation, conversation on the Queens College Black History Month celebration. As part of this important event, we want to say thank you to the Office of Student Development and Leadership under the Director Dwayne Jones for his platform, President Frank Wu and the rest of the Queens College administration and their teams, and the support of the Black Latinx Faculty and Staff Association under the leadership of Dr. Soribel Henao and her leadership team for putting together this significant and historical event. The topic today is Sikh history, a history of activism and dissent in Diversifying CUNY, What's Next for Special Program. And this topic is of utmost importance because the College Discovery and Sikh programs were the programs that diversified CUNY. And Queens College in particular was diversified by the Sikh program. It was one of the first programs in the City University of New York. It is my distinct pleasure today to moderate a panel of what I would like to call today 5 of the living greats of the QC Sikh program of that time. And I would like at this time to bring them on as I introduce them. And I want to pause to say to those, we had many calls from many people who wanted to be part of this conversation, that we are actively planning part 2 and part 3, so that everyone might be able to join in reflection as to the contributions of this historical program to CUNY and to Queens College. Let me start with our panelists for today. Today we have with us Dr. Barbara Williams Emerson. Dr. Barbara Williams Emerson joined Sikh with a new master's in social work in community organization and planning because she recognized it as a place to make a difference in the lives of Black and Brown people, as her experiences in the civil rights movement convinced her was her professional responsibility. While a counselor, she was drafted by colleagues to be the Director of Counseling and Dean of Special Programs and Director of the Sikh program. She completed her dissertation on the academic achievement of Sikh students. After 20 years at Sikh, Dr. Emerson was appointed Associate Provost and Vice President for Program Development at the New School for Social Research. Before retirement, she was Vice President for Academic Affairs at Metropolitan College of New York. Today, Dr. Emerson continues in the struggle as an activist, speaker, international traveler, president of Emerson Consultants, and proud grandmother of 3. And may I add that Dr. Emerson is also the daughter of the late Reverend Hosea Williams, one of the field generals and right-hand men of Dr. Martin Luther King. Welcome, Dr. Emerson.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm proud and honored to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Paula Land. Paula Land came to Queens College as a Sikh student in 1968. She majored in linguistics with an emphasis in teaching English for speakers of other languages. And upon graduation in 1972, was invited to work in the program as a lecturer in English. While teaching, she completed a master's in education in TESOL from Queens College, and then went on to obtain both a master's in education and a doctorate in education in higher and adult education from Teachers College at Columbia University. In 2004, after being the assistant director, academic coordinator of Queens College Sikh program for 2 years, she went on to York College to be the director of the Sikh program there. In 2006, she became the associate dean of students, with one of her assignments being the acting coordinator for 3 federally funded programs: the York Enrichment Services, the Student Support Services, and Office of Students with Disabilities. Her community service included membership on the New York City Health and Hospital Corporation Community Advisory Board for Queens Hospital, where she functioned as the chair of the Patient Care Committee, and membership on the advisory committee for the South Queens Multi-Service Center's Patient Consumer Advisory Committee in Jamaica. In addition, she was a founding member and later the chair of the Anguilla Progressive Association of New York. Her doctoral dissertation, done in 2003, was on the perceptions of the historical changes in Sikh at Queens College, a historical case study emphasizing the views of faculty, counselors, and administrators. Welcome, Dr. Paula Land.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Mark Levy. Mark Levy has had multiple roles at Queens College since being a 1960s Queens College undergrad and a student association president. He's a friend of the program even until today, often stops by. He returned to Queens College to get his MA and teach in the QC Sikh program. And next, after working many years as an industrial and healthcare union organizer, he returned to develop Queens College 50th anniversary civil rights commemoration and to initiate the Queens College Library's Civil Rights Archive. He now serves as an invited speaker at schools in the United States and the United Kingdom, talking about Mississippi Freedom Summer. Welcome, Mark. I think we'll wait till Mark. Here he is. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud and honored to be here.
Then next we have Dr. Cicely Rodway. Dr. Cicely Rodway joined the Sikh department at the time of special programs in 1973 as an adjunct reading instructor. Over the years, she taught English courses, coordinated the Sikh testing program and the Learning Center. Her doctorate in teaching and academic leadership was awarded in 1991 and her master's in social work in 2004. She's a licensed clinical social worker and addiction counselor, and though officially retired in 2012, she continues to serve Sikh students at Queens College in the Academic Success Initiative for Students on Probation. Welcome, Dr. Rodway.
Thank you, a pleasure and an honor.
We have Seymour Hodge. Seymour is the baby of the group, enrolled in 1967 and the night program at the time of the Sikh program. He then transitioned to the day program in 1968, graduated in 1972 with a major in economics and political science, was a research assistant for the Africana Studies at Queens College and the Research Institute at Queens College, and also the circulation manager of Newsday from 1982 to 1994, an adjunct lecturer at BMCC, a technology teacher for the Department of Education, and today he's a liaison officer for the government of Anguilla. And as you can tell, he's in a nice, lovely Caribbean right now. Welcome, Seymour.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
It has been my lifetime pleasure to have conversations with all of these lovely, lovely personalities here. So we want to get right into it. Let's start with the first question that I would like all of you to answer. And the question is, what year did you study your work? Even though we talked a little bit about it in your bio, what year did you study your work at the Queen's College Sikh program? And what is the memory that remains the most vivid in your mind about the Sikh program?
Who should begin?
Let's begin with Barbara, and let's come right down to Mark.
Okay.
Okay. I began in the Sikh program in 1971. And as you said earlier, I was fresh out of Columbia with my newly minted MSW in community organization and planning. And one of the things that struck me and always stuck with me was that the Sikh community, and I always thought of it as a community, was a community in many senses. And one of the senses was that the faculty and the students shared many characteristics. And one of the characteristics was that we were so similar in our backgrounds. We came from the same communities. We were very much of the same generation. The students many of the students were first generation college students, and many of us had been first generation college students. So we had shared those experiences. And then the students who were in the program at the time, they were the first generation college students of their families. And so they were struggling on that level. And we were, as faculty, the first generation of faculty of color. So we were also struggling with those challenges in the academy. So we were having to come up against some of the battles that were inherent in being on the front lines of academia. So at the same time, we were both meeting challenges that meant being amongst the first. One of my most vivid memories has to do with Lloyd Delaney Hall, and that was the day that we had the naming ceremony and the I forgot how we called it, but it was the day that we had the not the orientation, but the opening ceremony of the building. And we actually had contact with the Delaney sisters, who were at that time also became quite famous. They had done a book about their lives, and it had also become a Broadway play. But they were the Delaney sisters, and they were the aunts of Lloyd T. Delaney, who was the first Sikh director. So that was an exciting day, and we had a program out in front of the building, and that was a very glorious time for the program to have the opening ceremony of the building and to have had. They were not able to be there, but I was able to speak with them, and they sent their greetings and represented their nephew. So that's one of my most significant memories of the program.
Wow, fantastic. I remember those sisters. They lived up into their hundreds, right?
Yes, well, I think one was 103 and one was 105 when they passed away.
Fantastic. And Dr. Leon, what is your most vivid memory?
I think for me, it was something that happened in my freshman year. Okay. I was one of 14 kids. We were raised in the Patterson Projects in the Bronx, and we had moved to Queens and recently moved to Queens. And my dad got very ill. And my counselor at the time was Bill Modest. And my family was in dire straits. They needed me to stop college and to work. And I went to Modest to talk to him. And he sat there and he was extremely supportive. And he let me talk myself into a decision, which was to get a full-time job and go to school and not to give up college. And I think that was a major turning point for me. Okay. And he continued throughout my entire career as an undergraduate to be extremely supportive and helpful, and just called me, anytime he thought of me, he called me. and he encouraged me, and he just kept me going. And I think so. The most powerful thing for me, as having been a student at Seek, is my counselor. Okay, that my counselor kept me whole in so many different ways at so many different points in my life. Because my father had colon cancer, and he had a colostomy, and he was in and out sick. And it was always Bill Modest I could call and say, listen, I still have this paper to do. I'm just upset, and he would always listen to me and encourage me. So I think that the most powerful thing for me was the counseling staff at the college. Okay, what they were able to do in terms of helping me to survive being in the economic situation that my family was in at the time.
Wow, and thank you for that. And shout outs to Mr. Mo, who's still with us. Fantastic story. And yes, central to the program are the counselors. Seymour, would you give us your most vivid memory?
There were so many, I didn't know where to begin. I started at the Seek program, as you mentioned in the opening, at night. And my vivid memory is the assassination of Martin Luther King.
Wow.
That happened when I was in an English class, and I remember our teacher was Miss Cahill. And when we got the news that he was assassinated, all of us just closed our books and walked out of the classroom.
Wow.
And from that moment, a group of us realized that we had to do something at Queens College to change the concept and the phobia of the faculty and students at Queens College. Moving on, I then transitioned to the day student. I got involved with the Sikh students, I got involved with the Black Student Association, and I also got involved with the Caribbean Student Association. So that also assisted us in having all three groups getting things, projects that we wanted done at Queens College. I mentioned at some of the conversations, in terms of we were radical at the time. We wanted to get rid of required courses. We said, why would we need this? Why would we need that? I've been realizing now that it was necessary. I mentioned to Mr. Mark Levy, we took contemporary civilization. And at that time, we didn't see the need for it. But again, as you grow older, you will see that there was a need for it. The other aspect of my education at Queens College was my interaction, as Paula mentioned, the bond that we had with the counselors. The counselors was our support. Yeah. If we didn't have those counselors, I don't think any of us would have made it, would have graduated, I'll put it frankly. Yeah. But with the support of the counselors and other African-American faculty members and also personnel in Queens College, they were a source of inspiration and support for us as a student.
Fantastic. And I see that your being able to do student leadership change your life. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Dr. Rodway, your most vivid memory.
I came to Seek in 1983. Very new immigrant. I hadn't been in the country more than 3 years. This was my first job in America, and I was teaching reading. And I was very fortunate to always have a reading room. My students came to that room, and I was able to do things with that room, decorate, etc., and have books. And the most vivid memory for me is at the end of every semester, we put on plays and we had a party in every class, and every student brought a dish. And the faculty was invited to come, the counselors were invited to come, and it was a joy for me to watch these students who, when the semester began, had been shy and not very confident. Some of them ESL students, how by the end of at the end of one semester, 3 months, that they were as able to enter into a party and to dance. And even in those days, we used to have wine coolers. Now, of course, there's no alcohol on campus at all. But in those days, faculty served wine coolers, and we had a good time. And it was very important for me. And I remember, as I say, with joy, that I had a home as I had in Guyana with my students. And I remember them all the time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rodway. Mark, what was your most vivid memory?
Well, I came to teach and seek in 1968.
Ooh.
And let me make it clear that I worked for two very different Seeks. So I was hired by Mr. Mulholland and that administration. And when I came there, part of my first impressions were, I guess there were a couple of things before. I had graduated Queens in '64. I had spent the summer in Mississippi running a freedom school and learning from that situation. Then I had taught in Harlem for 4 years. And then here I am back on the Queens College campus. And I had this feeling of the alienation that I had back when I was a student at Queens. But as a teacher, I had tried to work past that point. And the two things that I remember very early on was that one was that all the teachers were reminded to fight against the traditional idea that administrators used to say when people came to college: shake hands with the person on your left, shake hands with the person on your right. When you graduate, only one is going to be there. I mean, our mandate, even from the beginning, was that we have all these students and our job was to get them through and to make sure they learned what they didn't get in their high schools or their previous schooling so that they could, learn and complete. So we had a double job, both teaching content in a course and also with working with the students around skills. So that was the first impression. The other impression was I walked into the classroom and I had these big, fat contemporary civilization books. But the students, as we, both I and they, as we tried to struggle through the materials we were asked to teach, the students were awesome. They were just awesome. And I remember the students in the class, I must have had a half a dozen students in each of my class who had been in prison and had come out before. Whatever you're going to say about Mr. Mulholland and some of that administration, his recruiting as a former, I guess, parole officer, he had recruited a lot of those students. And boy, here I was, this young white guy coming into this class and supposed to teach this contemporary civilization of, supposedly great white male thinkers of Europe. And I had students who really challenged that all along, and we had serious discussions, but those students were really smart and were really pushing me. Fortunately, then there was a big change, which we'll talk about later, and there was a different Sikh after that. And I remember so many of the colleagues that I remembered, particularly in the second wave of the Sikh faculty, and I'm sad every year to learn that some of them are passing and that fewer and fewer of the old timers are still around. But I think about them too.
And this is why this conversation is so necessary, because we need to be able to learn from the history to be able to carry on. So thank you all for that. The Sikh motto is struggle to learn, learn to struggle. What does this motto mean to you? And I'm going to ask each one of you to share that, because I'm sure that each one of us has a different perspective of this particular motto. I will say here that some years ago, an instructor asked us to change this motto because she did not agree with the word struggle. And we were like, no, that's the motto and it stays. So tell us, what does struggle to learn, learn to struggle mean to you?
Well, the significance is the difference between that and the college's own motto, which is a very nice motto, which is, we learn to serve. That's very nice. Everybody goes to school, so, we should pay back to our communities. But the Sikh one of learning to struggle to learn, learn to struggle, says it just doesn't come at you. I mean, that there are problems, that there are all sorts of things, and that struggle and the right to struggle and the right to speak out are important parts. You don't just come to serve, like the college's slogan says. It says you got to learn to struggle also. And that's something that's never taught in any school. So I think it's a critical part of the Sikh essence.
I think it was very, in terms of the population that Sikh began with, their getting to college was a struggle. They had to struggle to be able to get there. If they weren't motivated and very, very interested in getting an education, they could not have gotten there. And once they got there, many of them worked, were family members, and their education did not come easy. And so it was an ongoing struggle. And I think it doesn't just suit the students of the past, it's very, very relevant for the students today. In terms of their economic status, I think so. And the fact that they still are coming from high schools that don't serve them well.
Dr. Lloyd, I see you wanted to speak.
Now, I think that the powerful thing for me was the expansion of the curriculum. Mark, do you remember a book that you put together for us to study? And I still have it. It was a binder with all kinds of articles from everywhere, and it was that kind of thing where we just recognized we needed to learn more than just the traditional curriculum. So there was a whole need to expand the curriculum, and everybody, we laughed and joked about going away for the summer and then coming back after the summer and saying, I read this great book. I read this, and then sharing the book and find out that all of us were reading the same thing during the summertime, and the importance of us incorporating that somehow in our teaching and what we taught.
That's great. I just found my copy of that too.
Yeah, the expansion of the curriculum beyond what was just taught and we had learned in high school, to include more people of color and to include people who spoke different languages and from other parts of the world. Okay, so we just didn't see ourselves, and only in this vacuum we saw ourselves more in an expanded sense of what it means to be a human being.
Beautiful.
As a student, again, as was mentioned, in terms of the complexity of the student age group, as Mark mentioned, a majority of the students in my class were persons who came out of prison, and we had to deal with that. Other issues were most of them had families. So again, the struggle of coming to school, as I mentioned earlier, I started at night. So you're working, going to school, and the rest of them had families. I didn't, but it was still a struggle, but we did it. And when we graduated in 1972, I think it was about 100 of us graduated. And it showed Queens College, with the help from the SEEK program, if they put more financial resources in these programs, they can be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, that's what it meant to me, similar to what, as a counselor, what Seymour said. As a matter of fact, it was what drove me to do my dissertation. My dissertation, which I actually have here, my dissertation was entitled Academic Achievement. It's got a long title. Let me get it right. It's been a long time. It was based upon the idea that we put students through, they come in with similar backgrounds. We put them through the same model, the SEEK model, and some do well, others don't. And what's the difference? So the title was Academic Achievement, a study of social welfare needs in the achievement of disadvantaged students in higher education. So to me, the struggle to learn had to do with the fact that students came in and they were, as a counselor, I saw the struggles that they faced in learning, despite the resources that that the program provided to them. Students still came to the college every day and went back home, as Seymour said, to the problems of their home life and their community, which impacted their ability to absorb and make use of the resources that we were providing in the program. So it was a struggle for them to learn. On the other end of it, learn to struggle at that point, I think we were making an emphasis in the classroom and in the counseling office that we had a concept of developing change agents.
Mhm.
And that was what it was about, was empowering students to be agents of change and learning to join the struggle of our communities. So it was learning to struggle on a larger sense than just their own needs, but on a larger level. And many students on a micro level as well as a macro level of being community leaders did that when they left the college and have made significant contributions to their family lives and the lives of the communities that they live in, because they went back and addressed issues in their communities and became leaders in their cities and throughout the country.
Beautiful. Thanks for that great wrap up. We want to stress the fact that the SEEK program diversified CUNY and it also diversified our campus. So what were some changes that you experienced in the institution and on the campus with this new wave of Black and brown bodies coming on campus? I think Mark shared that, count on one hand how many students of color were there before, and with the SEEK program, you have this new. What changes were notable to you on the campus with the program coming on campus?
Well, one thing is that it changed the curriculum. There's several academic areas that did not exist prior to the SEEK program. All of the ethnic studies programs that exist on the campus came as a result of faculty and counselors in the SEEK program. I mean, I think except for the first one, which was Africana Studies, Kojo, what was Kojo's full name? I can't even remember.
Dr. Oforte
yes.
Kojo.
Oforte Kojo, who was a brother of the SEEK program, but not a member of the SEEK program, headed Africana Studies. But after that, Jesse Vasquez headed Puerto Rican Studies, who was a counselor. And then George Priestley headed Latin American Studies, who had been a contemporary community CC, a
contemporary civilization,
right? Community, and from there, I think June Bob headed that program, and so that was the basis for all of the other ethnic studies programs that exist at the university. Or at the college. So SEEK made a significant contribution to the academic life of the university, as well as sociology courses. SEEK counselors and faculty taught in in sociology, as well as other departments throughout the college.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and when I heard that really stuck with me, because I think the contributions of the program have been so vast and they have been largely unrecognized. So thank you for that, Dr. Emerson. Seymour, you were about.
Yes, I was going to add, again, most of these programs came out of students' demands also after certain incidents on the college campus. I vividly remembered when we had a demonstration at the Dome. I don't know if it's still there or not. And one of the demands I can recall was having an Africana and Research Institute implemented at Queens College. And as Dr. Emerson said, other programs emanated from our demands as students, and we had some faculty members came aboard and signed our petitions. And we took those petitions to the president of the college at the time.
Thank you for that.
But there was also a conflict that took place in '69 that was really important and significant, because it also opened us up to demanded that the university look at it. And then the Board of Higher Education said, okay, well, we're going to look at it, because they sent a task force in to look at why Queens College was having all of these conflicts.
Right.
And we had this major disturbance, and they wanted to know why. So they sent a task force, and the task force said, well, their curriculum is really good, so let's just let them do an experimental curriculum and let them, so therefore we were able to impact the curriculum of the college in that way because the task force report was so positive in that direction.
Could I ask Paula and Seymour a question as students? The question comes from recently I was doing some work with archives where the archives were doing oral histories about the Sikh program and with past Sikh students as well as other Black students on campus. And I ran into a number of students, Black students, who didn't want to cooperate with that effort because they said they found Queens College as such an alien and hostile environment that they would come, do what they had to do, and run away. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the great changes that the Sikh program brought was a safe space where people could talk to each other and be supportive and share. And so my question both to Paula and Seymour, when you left the Sikh space and went into regular college classes and went through the rest of the college, whether it was the cafeteria or the gym or the library or your classes, what was your experience?
Well, in the cafeteria, we had our own little section. And that was like our section. We would all go there, we'd all meet, and we would talk about different things and share different experiences and whatnot. I remember one time we had a discussion that was really interesting. I was taking a course on Shakespeare, and I was dealing with the fact that there were only two Black characters, Titus Andronicus and Othello. And I had my strong feelings about Othello being no swim, okay? And versus Titus Andronicus, okay? And Titus, and so I was able to discuss with them what was going on. Did I feel comfortable enough to discuss it in my class? No. I wanted to do my paper on Titus Andronicus. Did I do my paper on Titus? No. Because I knew that that would not be something that would be acceptable. So we did have a space where we had our own opportunity to discuss things and what our issues were and concerns were. And and then we went along with the program in the courses.
Yeah.
That's what happened to most of us. It's in order to survive it.
Yeah. From my vantage point, there was a stigma because, again, I would say a large majority of the white faculty and students felt that we were like poverty students. All Black students on campus were Sikh. So those who were not on Sikh, they felt stigmatized. I recall going to the Broadway's office for a project for some incident, I can't remember what it was. And the first thing they say, oh, we don't take Sikh students here. And these are some of the things that is happening today where, again, because the Sikh program brought in so many different diversity of persons, they said all students who are Black or Puerto Rican were in the Sikh program.
Yeah.
There were a number of Caribbean students who were in Queens College who also felt stigmatized. And the majority of them that I'm still in contact with, they have a negative view of Queens College.
Wow.
They came to the classes, but very few of them got involved with the student activities. I mean, I try my best to encourage them and, try to work with them and show them that you have to do the most you can do in terms of getting a great education. And Queens College had it, but you have to demand. And this is where, again, demanding an education from the school was so important to us. If you don't demand, you're not going to get anything.
So I love that you're talking about the feelings of isolation that are very real even to color, right? This feeling that I don't belong, feeling like an imposter, very real. And I think that one of the great contributions of the program also is that it allows for that sense of belonging that often people don't understand that students of color need that community, that family, that kind of embraces and hugs and says, okay, it's good, you can go on, we're here for you. So I want to go to, go ahead, sorry, Dr. Rodway.
When I was just thinking that one of the ways in which the Sikh program has made a significant difference. Because for the first time, the president of the student government is a Sikh student. I think that was 3 years ago, right?
We have had 3 consecutive years of having Sikh students as presidents of the student government. So it started with Carmine Kolu, it went on with Joseph Coburn, and now we have Zaire Kulu. So 3 consecutive terms.
And their entire cabinet is Sikh, or most of their cabinet is Sikh. And that has made a big difference in terms of visibility.
Visibility, and I also think that these young people have contributed with their leadership style. They've been able to embrace all the students. They bring a sense of community that was often lacking, and they bring that to kind of embrace the rest of the students. I wanted to kind of segue a little bit away from this to go into, oftentimes, one of the great differences that marks the program at Queens College is that we have a building, and the building is named after first Black director, which is Lloyd Delaney, Dr. Lloyd Delaney. But before people come and they see the building and they say, "Whoa, beautiful! You have a building," but they don't know that it was a journey. Dr. Emerson shared with me that she was an instrumental intellectual architect for the way the building was designed within the inside. So I want you to talk to me a little bit about the before and the after Delaney Hall. That transition, how it was before and after.
The road.
Okay. The Sikh program was a department. It was the Department of Special Programs with a chair. The Sikh director was the chair, and there were faculty members who held lines. The counselors were lecturers. Those of us who got doctorates became assistant professors. And so it was a bona fide department of Queens College. In the beginning, it was not housed as such. For instance, the counselors started out with offices on 61st, which was across the street from the auditorium. New departments were housed there because of lack of space on campus. Studies was first on 61st Road. These were houses like the ones that are down the street from the college. Some counselors had their offices were in what had been the section of these attached houses. The others were in bedrooms of what had been these attached houses.
Wow.
And when I came, there were a total of 32 counselors. Counselors had a ratio of 50 to 1 students, and it was indeed counseling. It was not advisement. It was academic, personal, and there was a separate group of financial aid counselors. So it was academic, personal, and career. And we had regularly scheduled appointments, but students had to come off of campus over to 61st Road in order to have these appointments.
Wow.
And so it was definitely not the ideal location, and it was like being a stepchild, literally set off to the side. So the agreement from the beginning was that accommodations would be provided for the members of the Sikh department, because it was the counselors and the reading faculty who were members of the Sikh department, that they would be housed as a legitimate department on campus. At some point, I can't remember the year, what year?
1970.
What was 1970?
That's when the Board of Education came in and they ordered another task force, and the task force then put the counselors and the reading faculty under the department, and academic faculty went into the academic departments.
Okay. Well, there was a point when we were moved off of 61st Road and onto campus, and there were another set of temp buildings that were next to the tennis courts, and we were housed there. And okay, so was that temp 5 or temp 3? I always mix them up.
Temp 3.
Which is the
No,
temp building?
Temp 3 is the last one.
Hmm?
Temp 3 is the one on Melbourne.
Okay, so it was temp 5. So we left 61st Road and we went to temp 5. And so the SEEK facilities then occupied temp 5 and temp 3. Still not even optically the best representation of a permanent department or program at the college. We're in temp buildings. So there was still the understanding that the program would be located in a permanent facility appropriate for the Department of Special Programs. That was always the understanding. When Delaney Hall became available, I don't know, what was it called before Delaney Hall?
Wasn't it the science building?
Yes. And when the new science building was built and that facility became available, this program negotiated for that space. And we were able to get that building. It was in deplorable condition. And we were able to get that space so that the entire program could be consolidated under one roof as a program with all of its services together, so that we could have a functioning program such that teachers and faculty could communicate with one another around an individual student in an effective way. So I had the opportunity, and this was one of the most enjoyable experiences of my career. I had the opportunity to work with the architectural firm. They literally took the roof off of the building, and the building was gutted except for the exterior walls and the structural walls of that building, and it was redesigned in the image of the SEEK program. From the top floor down to the basement, we decided the size of the classrooms that we needed for the first floor. The only space in the building that we did not occupy was an office downstairs that went to the commencement office, but the rest of the building was the SEEK program, from the upstairs where the tutoring center was, and there were some teaching offices upstairs. The second floor was the entire counseling facility that included a career office, as well as a counseling conference room and a multi-purpose room. And the first floor was administration and the Scholastic Standing Committee. So the entire room, down to a nook in the first floor to house the bust of Lloyd T. Delaney, I worked with the literal dimensions of the building for each, so that there was an office for each teacher, and there was a window with an office for each counselor, because that became a major concern for the counselors, that they have windows in their offices for the 40 hours that they spent on campus. Because in the older buildings, there were some counselors who were in offices without windows, because that was how the temp buildings had to be designed. We left temp, and after we left temp 3, I always get them confused, the building over by the tennis courts, Those buildings are no longer there because that was where the library the library now sits. So it was years of negotiation and moves before we got to Delaney Hall. And we also, I was the dean of the, and that's understand another change that has made in terms of demoting the program. The SEEK director was a dean during the time that I was a SEEK director, and I sat on the president's cabinet. And we did have a good relationship and leadership from Shirley Strum-Kinney, who was the president at that time and mentored me in many ways. I still have a relationship with her. And I think we had a much more respect from for the program at that time as a department. I sat on the college P&B. I was able to guide several faculty through the papers through the process for being made associate professors. And we had the status of a department, not just a program. We had a broader umbrella of a program, but we were also a department. And that was one of the reasons why we were able to obtain the building. One of the things that later came out is this, that we had that big opening. You'll notice one, for instance, those Spanish architecture buildings were the original campus. The Delaney Hall has the terracotta tiles put back on that building. So it is one of the buildings that was maintained as a historical building. The other buildings, when they redid those, for some reason, they didn't maintain the tiles. So technically it is a historically preserved building, whereas the others are not because they didn't keep the terracotta tiles on the roof. But the architects that were doing Delaney Hall insisted upon doing that. So that's how so it was SEEK from top to bottom, including the class. We had classroom space, we had counseling space, we had teachers' offices, we had all of our services, including classrooms and tutoring. We had a full tutoring center. We had all of the services under one roof. And we negotiated the naming of it as Lloyd T. Delaney Hall. And we did not know it. I did not know it at the time when I put that before the college P&B, because there were other names that were offered for the naming of it. I made the case for the name of it as Lloyd T. Delaney. But even at that point, which I believe was 1990, it was the first building on a CUNY campus to be named after an African American.
And it remains today the only building on our campus with the name of a person of color till this day. And I want to say to you that while I listen to you, our program has changed a lot. You're right. There's a lot of demotion and even more to come, it seems. But one thing remains, and I want to thank you, Dr. Emerson. We have that building as a testament of the struggle and of the partnership with the college. That institutional commitment was critical, and we still have the building. We don't have all the areas of the building, but we're there perhaps in 80% of the building, and our students and our staff benefit greatly from it. There are other things that have changed, sadly, but we thank you because that definitely remains. And if we had time, we could go into the artwork of it, which is
trying to say so with that Romero.
Yeah, so I want us to maybe take that up in a second or third series, because the artwork in the Delaney Hall building, people who know when they come in and they recognize the level of the artwork there.
Yes.
Are you surprised that it's preserved? It's there. We haven't put it out.
Well, you see, the Dormitory Authority, which is a misnomer for the authority that building construction comes under for the city university, but the funding for construction comes through the dormitory authority. And there is a proviso in the construction monies that a certain percentage of the construction funding goes to artwork. So it was a committee of the SEEK program that and it's a generous percentage for artwork. So it was a committee of the SEEK program that selected the artwork for the building.
And the artwork, I must say, I don't think there's a building in Queens College that has that diversity of artwork. There's artwork from Latin America, there's African American, there's all type, really representing the people that are in the building and the people that belong to the program. I want to segue to student protests, because that's part of our title today. And we know that Sikh students protested several times on campus. They protested starting in the late 60s, way into the 70s. So I would like you to share what are some memories of that time. And I know, Seymour, you were very involved in these protests, but I would like you to also say to us, what exactly were students protesting about? What did they want? You need to unmute, Seymour.
I'm sorry about that. Our main thing, again, from our teachings from Dr. Ofote Kojo, self-determination. We wanted to make sure that we had the ability to decide what is best for us, not allow someone else to decide what is best for us. So from my first demonstration was in 1968, 1969, 1970. And the demonstrations evolved around incidents at even other colleges. When there was the Kent State killing, the murder of 4 students at Kent State, the college really recognized that something had to be done. Again, as I mentioned earlier, after the assassination of Martin Luther King, we made several demands. So almost, to be honest with you, almost every spring, there was a demonstration at Queens College, and the majority of those demonstrations were led by the Black American students. Whether it was for the curriculum changing, hiring of more faculty, Black faculty, Puerto Rican faculty, you name it, we had a protest. And again, as we said, if you didn't struggle and make demands, nothing would be accomplished. Right. So I'm proud of what we did, and I'm just hoping that the students today would recognize that what they have today came about from the struggles that we went through in the 60s and 70s.
Absolutely, and we thank you for that. Now, Mark, I wanted to ask you specifically, as a faculty and as a white faculty, how did you experience some of this? And I think maybe Paula was part of those protests, so knows a little bit about it. So I would like to hear your takes on the protest.
I'm happy to share that, but I hope that when at some point that Seymour talks about the different tactics that were used in the struggle that he outlined when we were talking last night, he skipped over those just now.
We're going to go back to that, Seymour. You're not going to get away.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So there wasn't one white faculty reaction. There were different reactions among the white faculty. There were some faculty who supported Mulholland and who opposed all the activities and demonstrations and tactics that were being used. There were a few white faculty who did participate in some of the activities of the Black faculty, the Black and Puerto Rican faculty, and students who were being very militant on campus. And there was a fairly large number, and I would include myself in that number, where the messages we had gotten from the leadership was, you white guys just step aside, we're going to do our thing. If you support us, that's great. Let us know that you support us, but this is for us to do our thing. If the struggle is around self-determination, don't get in our way. We'll figure out how you can help us. And so that we would meet and talk among ourselves and say, okay, when somebody wants us to do something, how can we help? So there were 3 different reactions with the faculty. I personally was very proud of the changes. Proud is a bad word. It's sort of a patronizing word. I really don't mean that. I was excited by the changes because they were changes for me, and I knew that I was going to be asked to do different kinds of things. And a number of the white faculty chose to leave the next semester, did not want to stay around with the new curriculum, with their new colleagues. And I ran into one of them who was still angry about her experiences. But the rest of the faculty was evaluated by the new administrators. And I was very pleased when I was asked to stay, and there were others who were asked to stay. And the new faculty that were recruited, you know, I think of Yemi and Alem and some of the others, they were just amazing. The diversity, the experience, where they came from. It wasn't a group of people who had PhDs, but, you know, they had more than PhDs, and, you know, many of them eventually did get their degrees, but they were just amazing in the range of information, dedication, and commitment that they brought. So it was a very exciting experience for me, and I was very glad to be asked to stay after the change.
Thank you, Paul.
I think what's also important to note is the number of people who came as a result of that change, who came from historically Black colleges and had been educated by historically Black colleges, because they came with, you know, having that fortification, you know, spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically, where they came ready to struggle, and they came ready to teach us how to be change agents. And I think that's something that really needs to be noted, the number of people who came from the historically Black college experience.
Absolutely, Paul, and thank you for that. And I think for me, when I read the history, that is something that I see very marked. The HBCU's influence on the program was clearly there. So Seymour, share with us some of the tactics, some of the things. Yes.
Okay, I mean, I remember, I can't remember what the incident participated, us walking from all of our classes into the cafeteria, buying lunch, and walking out and just giving the clerks pennies. They were not happy about that. Another incident is when a group of, I think it was about 5-6 students, chained themselves to the corridor close to the dome. And again, that's when some policemen came and arrested them. Another incident I recall, again, this was a combination of Sikh and the again, predominantly white students joined us in shutting down the Long Island Expressway. We marched on the Long Island Expressway, and, you know, I think within 2 hours, the cops came and they reopened the Long Island Expressway, but that didn't go over well with the city of New York. The policemen came on campus, and we closed down the entire campus for that weekend. So, you know, we had to show that we meant business for our demands. And as I said, each semester or each spring, there was some demands that we placed on the college administration. And the majority of our demands was in aid of helping us as students and also the Black faculty that came on to assist that we graduate on time with a degree.
Excellent. Excellent.
You know, there's another point, Seema, I think that's important to point out about the demonstrations and the organization of the demonstration. Was
Right.
a point that Mark made about, you know, the diversity of students. I mean, I came from a Roman Catholic background, you know, all girls at high school. And many people came from that kind of experience. They came from the prison system. They came from, you know, they had been, you know, not in school for a long period of time because they were raising kids and decided they wanted to go to college because this opportunity opened up to them. So it was the kind of diversity, even though we came from similar communities and many from the same community, we would come from different backgrounds and we still could come together and sit down and talk to each other despite that educational background we came from.
Yeah. And another aspect, I don't know if it still exists, we also demanded a childcare program for Sikh students, and it was housed over on 61st Road. I hope that you all have it still, because, go ahead.
Not Sikh.
That program exists, but yes, Dr. Rodway, it's not run by Sikh. But I don't think people recognize that Sikh started.
Exactly. It
That
was
was
that was one of the
thing that
demands
they
that we
took.
did. Yeah, that was a demand that, again, as students, I said a lot, I'd say 50 to 60% of the students had families or young families, and we needed childcare. So that came out of that.
And many of the students who got involved in that who had their children in it ended up taking that on as their profession.
Right.
Later on, so they used the child care center was used as like a laboratory that you could get practical experience as well as you were studying about early childhood development.
Yeah.
I find it very interesting that this program, everything points to the fact that the SEEK program, the students were centered, and it was about the student need, as opposed to administrative ego saying, okay, no, this is what they need, or we're going to only give them that. The students demanded, and it was shaped around their specific needs. So I want to ask this question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Broadway and Dr. Emerson to help us out here. Who do you remember as some of the great administrative and academic and counseling leaders in the program during your time? And what made them stand out to you? Because there definitely was some strong leadership there to be able to support this very student-centered thrust.
Barbara, you go.
I think you're muted, Dr. Emerson.
Well, the program was definitely student-centered, and it was innovative. Just the example that you were using of the child care center, it was either the first or second, the other one was at the University of Michigan, child care center on a college campus in the country. I had a son who went to it. He went to the child care center. He graduated, and they had their own little graduation ceremony. I have a picture of him. He went to the child care. He graduated from the child care center. He graduated from Queens College. He has a master's in early childhood education from Queens College, and he worked at the child care center. So it was named the Lloyd T. Delaney Child Care Center. So that was an innovation there. And there are many other SEEK innovations that have been replicated in higher education. And when you speak of leaders that are strong leaders in the academic side, I think of Joan Nessel. Joan Nessel was an academic leader at the university. She also established the Women's History Museum or Women's History Library there in New York City, which was an archive of lesbian and feminist documents and works that still exist to this day. And she was a very innovative and caring English teacher there at the college. So I think of Joan when I think of academic leadership, for sure. On the counseling side, in terms of a versatile leader, I think of Nick Townsend, who was always on the forefront and willing to go beyond. I was thinking when we were talking about demonstrations, not only were there demonstrations on campus, oftentimes there were demonstrations on what we call 80th Street, which was the Board of Higher Education. And just about every year, I wasn't there for the on-campus demonstrations, but just about every year for many years in the spring, we would have to go up to Albany and lobby for the SEEK budget. So activism was on many levels at the SEEK program. But those are two people just to name two, a teacher and a counselor that come to mind, Joan Nessel and Nick Townsend as leaders in the program.
You know who comes to my mind? Ruth Siegel.
I was going to, and Corrine.
Yeah.
Corrine Jones. You know, they were instrumental in the English department in struggling for the courses and for the curriculum. I mean, they played a major role in a lot of different things that happened academically. Okay.
And Marty Hoffman.
Yeah, for math. Look at all the things that all the creative programs he set up in terms of tutoring math students. Even in his home, he used to have his students come on the weekends, so he was to prepare them for the exams.
But
And Benny Andrews and the art programs into the jails of the prisons of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't Pat McCoy have a lot to do with the prison thing as well as the child care center?
Who's that?
Pat McCoy.
Yeah. With the prison initiative and the child care center. These kind of questions I find hard to answer because I was under the leadership of Barbara for the most of the time. And I have a very high respect for her being always student-centered and pushing and what you did with the Delaney Hall and so on. But so many of the other people, whether they were at the same level as you, they were all activists. They all went to Albany. They all tried as much as they could. All were committed to moving Sikh forward. Yes. But I have, you know, if you were to ask me who was the leader who stood out the most for me for the time I have been there, I would say you were, and then now we have Norca falling in your footsteps. She doesn't like me to say that. But no, but it's true. But it's true, you know, alive and have with vision. But Sikh teachers, Sikh counselors, what marks them is them being concerned about students and being student-centered. And so it's hard for me to pick out anybody who, you know.
There's one other person I think we need to give recognition to, and that's Diane Walmsley. Okay, when we were having trouble with enrollment, you know, she came in and she systematized it. You know, she put it into a program, and she was very effective in terms of getting students into the program. And you know, we don't really look at that. The need came, and she filled the need, and she did an excellent job at it.
And I agree. Oh, yes, I remember her very well because she would always provide reports about her.
Right.
And we still have some of those reports. And one of the reasons why I asked this question is because I want us to honor by saying the names. I think has had a really great leadership in academic counseling, administration, and often unrecognized. So at least in this tiny space, wanted to give them that honor. But there's something
before you go on, I just want to say again, he wasn't my counselor, but I had a lot. Bill Modest.
He
was not my counselor, but I spent more time talking to Bill. But I spent time with my counselor, so I don't want to get that wrong. But again, as I mentioned last night, the counselors helped us a lot. I mentioned that every week we had to give the counselor a report of how we're doing in our classes.
Yeah.
And without that support, as I said earlier, I don't think I would have graduated on time.
Yes.
But Bill Modest, he is Sikh.
Yes.
Still current.
All right. Mr. Levy, could you please just unmute?
Is that okay?
Powerful thing about the Sikh program, and that is that you had a counselor that you met with consistently for a prolonged period of time, and that's why we graduated. I agree with Seymour.
Absolutely.
Okay, our counselors were there; they were there for us, and they guided us all the way through.
Absolutely.
There are two names that I would just like to call out that haven't been mentioned in the history, and they may not be the names of your people you remember academically, but Bill Sales and Sam Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
They were the tough, directed leaders of the rebellion that changed, and the people who gave the direction and the spirit and organizing to the rebellion. Sam Anderson was a math teacher, and Bill Sales was one of the, I think, if I remember correctly, social science teachers. And those guys were so smart and so tough. You know, they also had to negotiate with the college because once you start demonstrations, it's not just the demonstrations. You got to then sit down and talk to the people that have the institutional power and work out how are you going to end this thing. So I think we have to remember them and credit them. And all you guys have wonderful things to say about Modeste, but I got one unique one. He was the captain of the Sikh intramural volleyball team. And we won first place. We beat every student group. We beat the maintenance workers. We beat all sorts of folks. A really big, talented guy. And that was because not only does Modeste jump, I mean, man, can he jump? I mean, he's a basketball player, right? But he kept us disciplined and he kept us playing as a team. So I want history to record that Modeste was our leader on the winning volleyball team.
Absolutely, and we're going to have him on part two. I when I listen to the joy and I listen to the fantastic things that occurred, I still look at the fact that such a beautiful model that many have borrowed from and stolen ideas from. You did intrusive counseling, and now that's a big thing, but you were doing that decades ago, right? Learning communities, you were doing decades ago. But there's a trajectory that bothers me, and I have to link and call it out for what it is. There's a consistent underfunding and understaffing that occurs in programs that are led by people of color or that are for people of color.
Perceived.
This constant having to fight for monies and this constant, did you experience that? And in what ways you experienced it? And what can we do today that we're still forever fighting for the pennies to try to serve the students? What would you suggest? I know it's a tough question. There's a lot of reasons.
It's a tough question in terms of Sikh's uniqueness, okay, and that we were actually legislated into creation,
right?
Okay, and being legislated into creation at a particular time in history, it's at each point you see the deterioration in the program because they went at the guidelines. All the revisions to the guidelines. Each revision changed the program. Each revision took away something. Each revision, and then a curriculum revision. It wasn't just a curriculum. It was economic. And then the other thing is that what you didn't change, okay, was the economic criteria to get into the program. I mean, Pat used to say this all the time. She would say that we're missing the students that the program really was intended for, because we're not calculating in the working poor. And because our economic guidelines are not changing, okay? And because of that, certain things are happening. And I think that that's an important thing to look at, the fact that we were legislated into existence.
Yes.
Okay, and that causes, when you're legislated into existence, there's the legislature that changes things.
Absolutely. And that revision, Paula, you hit it on the head. And that constant revision, and I think again there are more revisions, just keep pulling away and tugging away at the nature of the program. I have two final questions because we're running out of time. And so my first and my final question, and I would like all of you to help, is, do you believe that in the age of Black Lives Matter, there is still a need for programs like SEEK? Because what I'm hearing is there's not a need for programs like SEEK as before, because students are doing better in high school. That's one thing that I hear. Or because colleges are now a little bit more in tune with the needs of students. So do we really have a need for programs like SEEK in the era of Black Lives Matter?
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. The issue for me is, like I said, the changes in the guidelines and how that affected the students who actually came into the program. Okay. That's an issue for me, because it seems to me that there was just a general, rather than give them educational opportunities and make sure they have educational opportunities, we'll put them in the prison system. Okay. Wow. So there was this opening up of this prison system that economically suited certain people because they were able to get jobs. Okay. But impacted our communities drastically. Instead of people going to college and learning how to be artists and learning how to be, engineers. Everybody has to be a doctor or a lawyer, because those were the things that when I grew up, you had to be a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, or a secretary. They gave you very few options. We have many, many options now. And we're not pushing kids to understand all the different options because we're all, it's almost like they're being driven in a certain direction. And that's what bothers me the most. Yes, there is definitely a need for SEEK.
As long as they're underperforming high schools, there will be a need for programs like SEEK. As long as students are coming out of high school underprepared to reach their academic potential, there's a need for programs like SEEK.
Right. Right. Anyone else? Okay. Mark, you want to take a shot at it? You're muted.
Mute yourself, Mark.
One of these days I'll learn the technology and then it'll be too late anyhow because somebody will invent new technology. But yes, absolutely. And on so many levels, and this event is almost over, so I could go on and on. SEEK is the model for good education. Mm-hmm. That's first. I mean, it's the best education. Open admissions was a revolving door. Come in, go out. SEEK says, come in, and we want to make sure you get through that door. Ms. Pierce-Anion talks about the door being closed, and and defunding SEEK is the same fear as the door being closed. And not only are schools being underfunded and treated badly, particularly in neighborhoods of color, like we watched the former guy, the orange-haired guy, rip up, in the weeks and months of his, first term, he would go on TV every day, ripping up all the good things. And there has to be a base for people to, have comfort, have a base to talk to each other, to fight back, and to have good education. And I think one of the models, and SEEK is much more diverse, but a model of success also comes from the HBCUs. Mm-hmm. There was a great deal of strength in those schools. Mm-hmm. And Queens provides, within SEEK, Queens provides some of that strength. So I think that's another reason, an aspect of Queens that I respect, of Queens SEEK that I respect.
So before I go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also would say because of SEEK, I gain in terms of my administrative skills, in terms of my organizing skills. I was involved in all of the Black Student Union, the Caribbean Student Union, SEEK, and I'm still doing that today. And again, because of that I would say nurturing that I received from the SEEK program, it made me a better person, a better man.
I want to read two comments. One is here from Adriana Moran. She said, it is sad that funding is a problem when SEEK has helped so many students become professionals. Totally agree with you, Adriana. It is a shame. There's another comment here from Asia. She says, as long as anti-Blackness exists, SEEK should exist and be properly funded. Totally agreed with that. Because it is sort of elevating those communities that have been left behind. So there's no reason for us to be underfunding. So this is my last question to you, and I would like each one of you to answer. We've talked about the great contributions of the program, and we could probably go on, and we have skipped a lot of questions, and there's really more that we could share. But what has been the greatest contribution of the SEEK program to your specific life and the life of your family? What did the SEEK program do for you as an individual or a professional? What did it do for your family? And with that, we will end.
It prepared me in life with my children to show them the value of an education. Now, my parents didn't have a college degree, but they also pushed education. I was done in turn make sure my children get a college education. And again, I will say that I did a great job. My oldest son, my daughter, she's a teacher in the Atlanta school system. My son is he is working at the Pentagon as accountant. He graduated from Morehouse. And my youngest son, he went through the route of the military. So they all were, again, I made sure that they have to be professionals. And again, I got that from the inspiration I got out of Seek.
Beautiful. Thank you. And congratulations on your children.
Thank you.
One thing that I didn't mention, I mean, in so many ways, this having taught for a short while, even in Seek, really changed my life and made me continue in many of the same directions. But one unique thing that I think hasn't been mentioned, you know, when I was in Mississippi, I learned, and this is early 60s, I started learning about Black history in the United States. What I never learned was about third world studies. I never learned about the cultures and civilizations and knowledge and mathematics and science that existed in the other continents. You know, that was what was wrong with this contemporary civilization course. You know, there were people living in caves in Europe, while at the same time in Asia, Africa, South America, people were building huge buildings and doing those other things. So I may have been a teacher, but I was a learner at that time. And the things that were really new for me to learn about was about third world history and knowledge and struggles, anti-colonial and anti-imperialist struggles, and what that meant for us. And that, as a social science teacher, it really changed the way I saw the world and the way I could talk about it.
And Mark, I want to mention here, I think Maureen Coran was your student.
Yes.
She's on the chat and she said something very powerful. She said that Seek lifted her out of poverty and hopelessness. No one in her family of origin finished high school, and she was able to. Thank you so much for that comment, Maureen. We appreciate it. I thank Seek for my whole life. Thank you, Maureen.
You know, something that, remember, I'm one of 14 kids coming out of the Patterson Projects in the Bronx, okay? And then we moved to Queens, and I came to Queens College. What really I look at is my sisters and brothers who were young. I'm the fifth child, okay? When I look at my baby sister who's an engineer, and you know how much I helped her, or my brother who's an engineer, and how much I pay in his tuition. Okay, once I started working, and I was able to take my younger brothers and sisters who were the 12th, the 13th child, 14th child, and just lift them up. Wow. So I lifted my whole family up. That's one thing. The other is I look at my daughter. My daughter is the global CO for Kraft Heinz, okay, which is the 4th largest company in the world.
Yes. Okay.
And she's their global CO. And then she was a partner in a law firm for a long time and then left them. And I also, everybody, I know some people saw her on TV during the pandemic and stuff, where she advocated, but Black Lives Matters. She now is advocating and working with Kraft Heinz for them to have a direct connection with historically Black colleges to provide not only scholarship money, but also to help them through. So there's some things that I learned and who I was as a mother and a person that I gave to her. And now she's playing a role in struggling to lift herself up and to lift the world up. So, I mean, I think that's something Seek did for me, because I would not have had the opportunity if it wasn't for Seek.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Paula. That's beautiful. And congratulations on your daughter and your siblings.
Congrats. So quickly, I would just like to say that Seek has given me a purpose. Has made me make a life, not just a living. And every day that I went to Seek was meaningful, and that's why I still continue to do some work. And to be given a purpose and a ministry in your job. When we began to look for students, I was able to contact over 50 students who I am in touch with. By email, by whatever. And without Seek, I do not know where I would be or where the students that I worked with would be, because it has given us all a home and a base that we can always reach back to.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rodway. I felt that. Thank you so much. And Dr. Emerson, we like your final.
Yes, I would like to say that I was not a Sikh student in the Sikh program, but I was a Sikh student as I worked in the Sikh program. Sikh allowed me to learn to be a professional. I came there right out of my master's program, and I learned to be a professional administrator. I got my doctorate using the Sikh students as my population. Once I left the Sikh program, I was qualified to be an associate provost because I had the opportunity as the dean and the director of the Sikh program to run a college within Queens College. We had over 1,000 students, and I was responsible for overseeing everything from pre-admission services to alumni relations. When I went to interview for the job at the new school, I was interviewing for assistant provost for student services. And I looked at the desk of the provost and I told her I could do that job with my eyes closed. And I said to her, I said, it looks like to me, I said, but what I really could do, and I looked at her desk and I parted off about a third of it. I said, but I could really take away, and her desk was piled up. I said, I could take away about that much of your workload. And I told her, and I said that because I have run a college, and they created a job for me at the new school because I convinced her that I was capable of doing that. And so I went from Sikh to associate provost at the new school and then vice president. And it was because Sikh had allowed me the ability to do my best and to hone my skills and to grow as a professional at Sikh. So that's what Sikh gave me, was the opportunity to be the best that I could as a professional and to grow there, to grow and develop. Sikh allowed me to go to professional development and to get my doctorate. So I owe my entire professional life to the Sikh program.
Wow. So in a few words, we can say that the Sikh program, if there ever was a need as now to look for justice, for equity, for inclusion, it's all incorporated in the Sikh program. It's been there for a long time. Everyone is looking and trying to make new things. The Sikh program is right there. We want to thank our panel of experts. We want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. We want to thank you for your stories that have inspired and lifted us up. Thank you for calling the names of many that have passed away, but their contributions nevertheless are significant because they remain in our heart. We want to thank all of you who joined us on the chat. I saw a couple of students joining and other staff members. We want to invite those of you who are watching today to stay on the lookout. We really intend to do two more parts of this because there's so much we can talk about this program. And we invite you, for the Black History Month celebration right here on the same YouTube channel. There's going to be a hip hop cipher. There's also going to be tomorrow a presentation on LGBTQIA in the Black community. There's a lot still happening. Please continue to follow and to join us. I think someone wanted to say something before.
Yes, I would like to add, if it is possible for you to develop an account where Sikh students can make a contribution to the Sikh program. The other departments have it. I contribute, again, with my major in economics. I would like to make a contribution to the Sikh program.
We thank you and we hug you. We do have that link. I will send it to you.
Okay.
Also, Norm, I think it might be good too for us to talk about ways in which, even this pandemic and the fact that the students are now learning through Zoom, is there any way that we could help you in terms of with Sikh students? I mean, we're willing to volunteer our time to help some students.
Fantastic. I'm glad it's here. It's recorded. It's live. We will be calling you. Students, I know the greatness that is in this room, and I know that the students will benefit greatly. So we are going to be calling on you. We want to say thank you, BSA, and thank you so much for all the significance. And thank you, because I always feel that I have to do right by Sikh, because all these greats came before me. I don't know them, but I don't want to let them down. So thank you so much for what you have done for the program.
And the best thing that ever happened to me in Sikh was to meet you, Norca. Thank you, Norca, for arranging all of this.
Yes, thank you so much, Norca.
Fantastic. I see one of the
Everybody.
students.
Thank you.
It only takes one person in the family to build and start wealth for a generation. Sikh allows us to do that. Yes, Ann Gonzalez, absolutely. So we need to keep making sure that is around for many more generations to come. Until next time, everyone, thank you for joining us. We leave you with the Sikh motto: learn to struggle.
Struggle to learn.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.